everyone, it is Sarah, and we are once again doing science in Sarah's kitchen, even though we don't need the kitchen for today's activity. What we are looking at is the misconception probe. So in that case, we're assuming that kids do have misconceptions. And so what I was looking for is a situation that I work with a group of kids in the afternoons after school through a mad science program. So it's 6 weeks long, and in this particular program we have a different theme for every week. So this week's theme was magnetism, something kids love. We had tons of fun activities to do, how do magnets work and all that sort of thing. But for the misconception probe, I decided to first Google, okay, what are some common misconceptions with kids, and just misconceptions about magnetism, and then pick some of the simpler ones since I am dealing with elementary kids. So the two misconceptions that I looked at were, one, that kids think that things that are anything that's shiny is going to be attracted to a magnet, and then the second thing is that if something's made out of metal, it's going to be attracted to a magnet. So the way that the probe worked is that I first started off the class period just to make sure, don't want to misunderstand what the situation is of the kids. So I said, how many of you guys have ever touched a magnet before or played with a magnet? Of course, they all said that they had. I asked for a few of them to give me some ideas about how does a magnet work. I got some of the younger kids going really simple. Oh, magnet sticks to your refrigerator. Yeah, it's very valid, it does. A few of the older kids got into a little bit more, oh, there's a positive side and a negative side to it. And said, okay, that's great, we're gonna come back to that later. But first, I wanted to give them a scenario, just like you do, with a misconception probe. So I read off the following information to the students. Imagine that you are now all grown up, you have a big job, you're making the money, and you are moving into an office, and you are working in a hospital. And the office that you're moving into in this hospital is in the room right next to a room that has a very large magnet in it. And we talked very briefly about MRIs, and some of the kids actually knew what an MRI was. And I explained that that involves a very big, strong magnet, and they have to be very careful with those magnets. And when you go in for an MRI scan, you are asked, do you have any metal? Do you have any jewelry? What are you wearing in your clothing? Anything embedded in your skin? So we said, okay, we have to be very careful with these magnets. So if you did have something that could be attracted to a magnet in your office, it would be a really bad thing, because it could just, be sitting and all of a sudden go flying up against the wall. Ha ha ha, that would be really silly. It might hit you in the head. Oh, that would be bad. So what I did was, as I called their name for attendance, I had my attendance sheet, which had not only a list of the kids' names, but also what grade they were in. I called them up one at a time, and I showed them. I had a display in the front of the room, all these different objects that I actually have around the house, and I had them pick one of the objects and tell me, yes, I think this will be attracted to a magnet, or no, I don't think it will be attracted to a magnet. And not only did they say why they thought it would or wouldn't, or not only did they say, but they had to explain why would this or would it not. And then as I was doing that attendance, I specifically called the kids up in age order, because I already knew from my initial question that some of the kids who were older, were more advanced, had learned about it in school. So I started off with my little first graders. I had kids ranging from first grade all the way up to sixth grade, and they came up and they picked up an object. So it went pretty quietly at first. We had our first kid come up, and they picked up this decorative metal star. They picked it up, they looked at it, and I asked them, okay, is it going to stick to the magnet or not? The child said yes, and he said that he thought it would stick because it is made out of metal. And then I turned to the rest of the group and I said, okay, so there's your argument. Do you agree? Yes, it is going to stick to a magnet, or no, it's not going to stick to a magnet. And we created two different piles as we went through all those different things. The thing that was different between the kids who got to come up and touch the object and the other kids was that the other children didn't get to touch the object. They had to go based on the observations that they had heard from the person who was actually touching it. So, chance to practice observation skills and to come up with an idea of what they thought was going to happen. So we went through a few that were of interest. We agreed on the first few, with maybe one kid who is being a little disagreeable that particular day, and disagreed for the sake of it. But one that was a little bit of a conflict is this right here, and I'll bring it a little bit closer. What this is actually a pencil sharpener, which is really cool. Sadly, the spin doesn't sharpen the pencils, but you get the stuff out from the center, and the kid picked it up. Oh, it's definitely going to be attracted because it is metal. And the other kids looked at it and they're like, wait, I don't know. Because it doesn't scream, it's not super shiny, silvery, so maybe that idea of, oh, if it's shiny, then it's going to be attracted to a magnet, that misconception maybe was happening. And I said, you can't touch it, but I'll bring it closer. So they looked at it, and we had disagreements about that one. Some of the other ones that were interesting were our super glue container. We knew that the plastic end was not going to, or they all knew that plastic end wasn't going to be attracted, but we looked at the other side, and you can actually see a little bit of that shininess that indicates that this is a metal. And so that was throwing off a few of the kids, a little bit more disagreement. One thing I found interesting was I had tinfoil, and I had it laying out flat, and the student picked it up, and I think this was getting to be about 3rd, 4th grade level, and he asked if he could crumple it. And I'm wondering if that might have implied that he thought whether something was magnetic or not could be impacted by what shape it was, as opposed to just being a characteristic of that particular material. So I said, yeah, go ahead, crumple it. And so he crumpled it, and in the end he said that, actually the entire class agreed that this was not going to be. So, okay, aluminum foil, we were saying something shiny, so maybe that misconception wasn't as true as we thought. But keeping on going with the things, we had a twist tie, and I can't find it right now, but that twist tie, they saw it, oh, a lot of disagreement because you couldn't see the metal, but some of the older kids knew there was metal inside of it that allowed it to have its shape. So disagreement there. And finally, one interesting one was the penny. So one of the kids picked it up, the older children, this was left over, and he said, it's a metal, but it's not the kind of metal that sticks to magnets. So now we're seeing that complexity and what we really want to see in those kids and have them understand it's not everything that's metal is attracted to magnets. So we finished all of that, and we had our handy wand, and so we did some tests. We had our paper clip, and oh, sure enough, paper clip stuck. And so we went through everything, and for those of you that are interested, no, this lovely, cool pencil sharpener does not stick. It's not the kind of metal that sticks. However, a fairly similar looking metal with a star actually does stick. The students who had said that the super glue was not going to stick were correct, because as you can see, it's not sticking. I also had brought in a shiny cap from a spray bottle, and this really didn't throw the kids, so I don't think that the misconception about everything being shiny is also magnetic. I don't think that was the case. But the idea of definitely metal, or if it's metal, that it is definitely going to be something that is attracted to magnet, that was something that I think a few of the kids were confused by. So in the end, after we had done all the tests, I went back and said, okay, so what can we say about metals? If something's made out of metal, does it definitely mean that the magnet is going to be able to pick it up? And they all said with a resounding yell, no! And then they had been so bored waiting for all of the kids to pick their objects that I immediately rushed on to giving them magnets and their own little activities to do with those magnets.